Hey, StoryMakers. I'm so excited. I am in Charlottesville today in Ginger's studio, and we are getting to chat with my good friend. I love your title always as Canyon Myra Garnes. She's fantastic. She has been in youth and family ministry for I don't know how long, but you know everything. And I'm just so excited to have you with us today and for StoryMakers to get to know you. So welcome, Myra, and we're so happy to have you here.
Thanks so much, Mel. It's such a joy to be with you. I've missed seeing your face, so it's wonderful to have this reunion via podcast. I'm physically in Phoenix today, so I'm loving the sunshine and the warmth here. So it's good to be with you.
Well, it's that's the best part of all the remote. We can be anywhere and be together at the same time. So great.
Indeed.
Well, Myra has been such an amazing champion of StoryMakers, and really, I just mentioned this before, like the wind beneath my wings. You know, when you're getting and you're starting a thing and you're not quite sure what you're doing, it's amazing to have an advocate and someone who knows the field and to just root for you. And so Myra invited us to be partners in the Diocese of Long Island. And now you're the officer for youth ministry in the wider and bigger church. So yeah, Myra, I would love for our listeners to know a little bit more about you. I know we don't just land in youth and family ministry, like something happened. What's your story? Tell us.
Oh, Mel, God has a funny sense of humor, I like to say, because this was not at all the plan for my life. I was headed in this path to be a college administrator and found myself at the National Cathedral School for Girls, and that's where I was introduced to the Episcopal Church. You worked at the school in diversity and multicultural education, and I was a class dean, and then ended up leading the Cathedral Scholars Program and at the National Cathedral and working with high school students in DC. And those connections just, I think, drew me closer to the Episcopal Church and the beautiful connection of our baptismal covenant. And then I met Bishop Lawrence Provenzano, and he and I just got up to some good holy troublemaking, and had a chance to lead, be the director in Canon for Youth and Young Adult Ministries in the Diocese of Long Island for many years before, in the last 2 years, moving to the presiding bishop's staff to serve as the officer for youth ministries. So really have had a long background in student development and social justice education. And it's just been a beautiful mix with this gospel story of youth ministry and advocating with and for young people, for them just to find their voice in church, in their communities, and in the world. So it's been a gift.
That's so cool. Well, one of the things I so appreciate about you is I went to convention in Long Island years ago, and you were leading the charge, and like you did this amazing thing where you had the youth were experiencing convention at the same time as the grownups, and it was just, you know, when I think of you in a way that's like you offer curiosity and empowerment, and just this spirit of like, why not? You guys can lead the way. And I think for so many of us, especially those of us who are not in the youth or young adult space, we can feel intimidated or slightly afraid of that age group. But you seem to have no fear, and it's like you're in your natural water with that group of kids. And so, you know, a lot of our listeners are thinking about how they minister to that age group or how they're parenting that age group. And what would you say, Myra, is like sort of the secret sauce of staying connected and curious with this young generation?
I mean, I think it always does us well to, mix practical experience with, the ability to read and research a little bit of data and what's happening generationally and shifts about who is Gen Z, who is Gen Alpha, and not pretending that our story as Gen Xers or baby boomers is their story, right? Like their lives and their experience, their exposure is so unique to what we had as young people. So, but I do think that, they have a good BS meter, right? And so we have to be authentic, right? We have to be authentic. We have to, I think, also not pretend that we are them. Like, don't play this game of like, I'm cool and I'm like you and I have all the slang and the, we don't have it. We don't, because I can't even keep up, right?
I mean, there's so many words that I'm sort of scared to say. I'm gonna say, what does that mean?
Yeah. Less. But I also am like, please tell me what that means, right?
Yeah.
Like, questions about what does that really mean? And actually one of my good friends and her niece have done a wonderful job of modeling some of this for me. She's a Gen Z, so like Auntie and Z, and like trying to really open up spaces where us aunties and Gen Zs are just talking about all the things, right? Like, let's listen to what's going on in your life. And then us authentically sharing our same struggles, right? Like what is, and not pretending like we have it all together because, or that we're not struggling with what's happening, right? I mean, let's talk just present day. Like, let's just get down to it, Mel. The elephant is in the room. We've had this election. Young people are feeling whatever. Some may be celebrating, some may be really concerned, questioning, worried about their freedoms, worrying about the story of their life ahead and what may change. And if it's not their story, it's the story of people that they love, their friends, their cousins, their peers, their neighbors. And so what we don't have, I think the gift of the church, right? Like the gift of the space that we have is that we can open up our doors, we can open up our rooms and provide space that's not happening in schools, right? We're seeing so many changes across the country around what curriculum can be taught, what stories get to be told of our history, what words we can even say, what teachers can say or teach, what medical professionals can teach, who can treat or prepare. But the church is gifted with the opportunity for us to be able to be in community and listen and talk and share our struggles and concerns. And so, I just feel like I want us to open our doors, from all generations and figure out how do we begin to make this a safer place to address what needs to be addressed in our day-to-day. And young people want that. They want something authentic and they want to look at the issues that they're most concerned about. This is their baptismal calling, just like it is ours.
Yeah.
How do we plan and prepare for our day-to-day and for the future, of young people younger than them, right? Like their little brothers and sisters and siblings, friends, children, whoever, right? Like the story can't just be about me and my today, but what does it mean? Like, what am I doing to prepare a way for who's after me, who comes after me?
Yeah. And I mean, we talk a lot about the third space and the church being that third space for them to have these conversations. And I just think about my own daughter who's 17 and we're doing college essays. So we're kind of like looking back at her whole experience as a Gen Z. And, when she was 12, Greta was in New York City and, and then you had COVID. We had BLM movement. There's just, the thing about Gen Z is that they have not been, they haven't been hidden. The world is fully in, full color for them. And so it's like, what does the church and what do we grownups have to offer them as they may be facing anxiety and fear as everything is at their front doorstep and they're wondering, am I, Whitney Houston vibes of like, am I the future that's going to, make the way, teach them well and let them go,
right.
So, but maybe we just are a space, that third space in some ways for them to know that there are people that are for them and, ready to ride the waves of emotion. Myra, when you were growing up as a teen, did you have a moment such as that or a young adult, like just kind of coming face to face with the world and knowing that the church or some faith community or there was a third space for you?
Wow. I was very involved, as a student athlete. I was just actually reconnecting with some of my teammates who were inducted into the Athletic Hall of Fame at our high school.
I saw that.
And so it was just like this really huge moment of revisiting the impact that some adults had in our life, particularly some of our
Mm,
coaches, some of our teachers who actually challenged us and were helping to raise us, we said, in ways that, alongside our parents, whether they knew it or
yeah.
not, right? Like young teachers who are thinking, who we know now are so close to our age. But
No, you're like,
it,
were you
yeah.
like, I don't know. I just imagine everyone was like at least way, way old, 20 years or 30 years old.
Oh
You're like, oh my gosh, you were like 3 years older than me.
yeah. Yeah. We were figuring some of that out. We were doing that math thinking, we thought you were like 50,
50.
whatever that looked like. Yeah. Um, but what I loved was it it just was it was the space that we had to just kind of grapple with hard
Mm,
questions when we felt like there was injustice or something that was wrong, that there was a teacher, that there was a administrator who would open up the door and say like, hey, I'm going to listen, like I'm here, or like to give us just creative space to strategize what was the next thing that we needed to do. Like we had within us actions. Like, I mean, I remember one example of uh, we were feeling like we were like Martin Luther King holiday was not being recognized in the way that it
mm,
should have. We had to go to practice, we had games, we had all these things, and nothing really kind of held the event. And so we were like, we're going to have a whole like protest thing going on, and we're shamed by some teachers, but also there were some teachers who had the wherewithal to understand we get what's at the heart of the angst. We get what's at the heart of the concern. And so, like, fast forward many, many years later, being able to thank some of those folks
mm.
who created those spaces where it felt like, I think as a young person, they're consistently being told, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to get up here. You need to go there at this timeline, follow this direction, and that kind of thing, which of course is about safety and process and procedure and all of that. But it also is that hopeful and important space for growth, and for learning to be able to say, even if young people you make a mistake. We all make
Yeah,
mistakes.
yeah, it's
So I
a
get it.
time where you take risks.
You
Our
gotta
brains
take
aren't
risks.
fully, and you think about the kinds of risks that these kids are taking now and you were taking, those are like good risks to take. And
Mhm,
also I think with Gen Z too, it's like their superpower is like they are high level empathy.
mhm,
They're
mhm,
upset because they're like empathetic human beings who are taking a look around and thinking like I'm an image bearer of the creator of this world
mhm,
and this doesn't
mhm.
sit right with me. And
Right.
so instead of like shutting that sort of natural instinct that they have, which I think is a god-given instinct, but just
Mhm,
helping them shepherd through and walking alongside them,
mhm.
in a way that's productive and helpful and peaceful. That's sort of a great opportunity that we have.
Yeah. And I think, the beauty of, I think this generation is much more in touch of feelings and their emotions and their mental health and well-being than generations before, right?
Oh
And so
yeah.
have, they have, they have a language to
They
speak to
have
that.
language for it.
They
Like,
have,
oh, it's just, my kids
they
will be
have
like, I'm really anxious right now. It's like, I never said those words to my mom for sure. I was just like, I don't even know how I feel.
yeah. And also sometimes I think it's important too to unpack that, right? Like 'cause sometimes we can just get into the words. I'm anxious, I have
Mhm.
anxiety, my anxiety is high. Talk to me about what that looks like. How does it feel? How does your body feel when you experience that, right? Like, so I think as adults, it's asking questions, not like interrogating in a nasty way that is questioning that, but it's also asking questions for clarity and understanding. And what
Mhm.
happens, and what do you usually do? Like, these are questions I've been asking some young people to make that, to ease that, right? Like, what changes that? What moves that emotion to a better feeling or a less anxious space, right? And so I love that they are willing to, like name it,
Mm.
understand, or like honor and respect if, even if that's not their experience, it is the experience of my friend, my peer, my classmate, my acolyte, sister, brother. So it's I think for us as adults, our ability to really listen with openness and authenticness, and also to say, like, I'm not available now. Like, if you're not available for that, please don't pretend like you are, because I
Yeah,
think they see right through it, right? Like,
that's right.
I'm not in a space to like be fully present, but I could do that when, like, name the
Yeah,
time, right?
yeah,
Um, and then preparing for what that looks like later, right? And so that you can authentically be together.
yeah.
Um,
I think what's one thing is so cool too is being able to help them see stories of resiliency as they're sort of moving through these waves of emotion to grown-ups. I think
mm,
that's a really nice tool to have in your back pocket. Doesn't necessarily have to be a Bible story, but I think stories of people who have gone through something and then they've made their way through. It's a way for us to help them build resiliency too. And so,
mhm.
Myra, we love to ask questions about stories. Segue. And I just barely mentioned this to Myra before we chatted, but one of the things, story is so therapeutic for myself because when
Mhm,
I'm feeling anxious or afraid, I think about characters and I think about people in the Bible or all sorts of different scenarios,
mhm,
mostly like kids' books. But I think about these characters have like moved through something. And,
mhm,
Myra, are there any stories that have captured your imagination, stories
mhm,
that have sort of helped you move through life and your
mhm,
faith experience?
mhm. I think about two books that really have shaped. I mean, there are many, right? But this comes up. I mean, I'm thinking of the resilience of Black women and how that is my life. It is my story. It's the story of my ancestors. It's my beloved mother and grandmothers and aunties. Um, and I think about sort of these underdog stories, right? Achille and the Bee was an impactful and powerful story, and then movie, right? Um, of when people doubt you, and then you just show up and show out,
Yeah.
and like you flip on its head this notion that you're not good enough, or I can't believe you're here. There's not a space for you.
Hmm.
A story of overcoming, like The Color Purple was for Alice Walker, and
House
such a
walk.
ground. I mean, hard, like gut wrenching work, but also this, like a legacy award winning work that has gone on and grown and lived. And the way that story was just retold with a more modern lens in a movie context. And so, um, those stories, those hold special, dear, near places for me. And
Mm.
I think it's important when we are, again, turning it back to young people, is like, how do we provide them, in case this is missing in education, church,
Hmm.
how do we provide all our young people stories of heroes, heroines, leaders that represent so many different faith traditions, right? I mean, faith traditions, cultural backgrounds, um, LGBTQIA plus, socioeconomic status. Like, I just think that we begin to love and understand one another when we can just like connect and relate to our stories.
Hmm.
And make space for that, like you said. I mean, this is StoryMakers, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and
So
I think the thing with, we love stories, obviously, but it builds empathy and curiosity about other, rather than, and it gives us an opportunity to engage,
mhm,
and it reminds us that we're all image bearers. So even those, that we feel so in disagreement with or detached from,
mhm,
to begin to build that muscle of empathy and image bearing, I think is so crucial to society, our micro and our
mhm,
macro. And when you think about being a teenager and you think everybody's staring at you and you're so anxious and you think, one thing is, you trip up, you mess up and your social life is over, especially with social media. And that's like a whole other thing that they're dealing with. But to remember and to be known and loved by the grown-ups around you and to know like, oh, what does that feel like that they see me as an image bearer of the creator of this world and that they love
mhm,
me and they offer me grace, like that's a place I can go to when I feel like I'm messed up really bad on TikTok.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can be those people because they know we don't know about TikTok. So they're like, you know what?
Right.
I'm going to
Yeah.
go talk to Myra about the situation because she's not probably, she doesn't know. I don't know, So anyway, I think that that's just like so key to the whole thing and staying connected. So Myra, if you're thinking about, the grownups out there that are struggling to be connected, maybe if you could give us like 3 fun tips for them to walk away with, or parents, like, do you have any fun, I don't know, any fun walkaways, like games or simple things that you can just do to get the party started, as we like to say here?
You know what? I think any games where it's like questions, like where it's low impact, and I'm trying to think of a good one right now. We just purchased this one game that we're going to use with our parents, right? Like to get more of them to tell their stories. But I think I think those where it's, they may aim it at an older generation, but I think it's also like look for those ways for all of us to talk about young people through like an intergenerational experience of, when was a time when you felt safe, when you felt unsafe, when you first knew how loved you were, or like something that was hard, challenging, and you overcame, or stories about, you're growing up, right? Which I just find within generations, it's like so much fun. Like the answers could be all over the place.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Yes.
And like basic ways too of like, how did you send messages to your friends? Like, what's the number one way like you communicate? And if you've got a grandparent and if you have 3 generations in a room, that's going to be so different and wildly. Especially, I mean, my kids still are like shocked that I didn't have internet.
Right.
I was like, I didn't have an email till I went to college. And then I thought, that wasn't real. I was like, I didn't even sign up.
Right. A cell phone.
I was like,
what was that? When did you get your first cell phone? Right. And then music. I think connecting through music and trying to share one another's music, and what's good. And I love that, young people know, and we have to do some work here, right? I love that they know the old music. They know the old school songs, right? We're not always as good at theirs, right? Like their generation of music. So I think we have some work to do there. I think also kind of getting out, this is one of the projects we're doing, also in the formation department. It's like the Camino project and journeying together. Like how do you create experiences to be out and to be in nature and to be listening for God? And, maybe within the context of that, you have, you can do things that are really scripted around, specific questions. But it also is like being together in space and listening for God and experiencing God together, and the beauty of nature within that. Always to me is a gift and a win, when we all are so stuck inside and connected to devices and not, not giving ourselves time enough to just breathe and be. And, I find young people also love, just like meditation and like time for silence, and, whether it's full on sort of like some kind of yoga or it doesn't have to be like the hardest stuff, but like, how do we also feel in our bodies, what we're experiencing, right? Like time to just like breathe, let go, and listen for God, listen for, direction of like where, how do I just relax and not like take everything so serious.
And that's, I think that remaining so curious, and then also not assuming that they wouldn't want to do that with you, or it's like, hey, let's go on a little adventure. It's like, we're gonna go hike, or we're gonna do it. I was listening to this book today. They were talking about bathing in nature to calm anxiety, and it's just, I think oftentimes when we're trying to stay relevant or connected, we can get tripped up by our own inability to see that, like, right, like what you authentically love, they may get into because you're like totally, really genuinely into it, the thing. So I think holding on to that grownups is key.
Yeah. I mean, I just met a colleague who leads the UP Upper Peninsula Church in the Wild, and the experience of, people from all walks of life worshiping together or being called into this opportunity to listen for God and to experience God, without this notion of, for those who may not, we're in and we go to church and we believe in that common worship. But some folks need an invitation that doesn't feel like, oh, I have to walk through these doors and I have to know something really special and specific. So I would commend that. Like, I'm trying to learn more about that and figure out how could I start my own sort of wild church just for like me and my friends too, who
Yeah.
some feel like I'm not there. Or for us to be able to invite a range of young people into an experience of God and listening and holding space together. So it just feels like sharing our practices in a variety of different ways is what might also just expose us to more young people. Like, also in the doing, I think opens up for all of us an easier opportunity to talk and to share, right? As opposed to let's sit here and look at each
Stare
other
at each
face
other.
to face. And then like what opens up may be a little more challenging. So
It may not be as organic.
yeah, maybe not as
And
organic.
it might not be as organic and fluid. And I worked in behavioral health for my 20s, and I remember being matched up with kids who they would put in the category of like oppositional defiance disorder, or like ODD, and they're just like put you in a room and there's like, okay, can you fix said child or whatever? And we would do art together because it's like, they don't know me. And I'm just what am I going to say? Like, well, you're doing X, Y, and Z wrong, and we got to get this right. But like art, visual language, beautiful elements, music, all of these different ways that God's connecting to us is just, it's that simple, right? It's not super complex. Yeah. So, well, Myra, it's so good to have you on with us today. We are so encouraged by your ministry. And, there's a camp that Myra runs and all sorts of great ways to get connected to the wider ministry that you are up to. And we'll make sure to keep those in the notes. But it is just such a pleasure. And truly, you are an encourager. And I would encourage all the listeners, stay curious, encourage one another. It's just, you have no idea what a gift it can be to somebody. And so we appreciate that so much about you. So lots of love, StoryMakers. Thank you, Myra.
Thank you so much, Mel. It's been a joy to be with you.